Welcome back to Word of the Day with Lance Conrad. Today's word is dismay. Let me tell you a story. Dismay can be noun or verb. It means alarm, distress, or to cause someone alarm or distress. The roots are kind of fun on this one. Dis means a negation, taking something away. May actually shares a Germanic root with the word might. So imagine how you would feel if someone took away your power or sense of security. You would feel dismay. For a long time in American history, women did not have the right to vote, which no doubt dismayed many women in that time. That was fixed with the 19th Amendment, which was passed in 1920, 100 years ago, and there was much celebration. However, there was significantly less celebration surrounding the first woman to ever run for president. Victoria Claflin Woodhull was not an ideal candidate. She was radical in many of her views, including being in favor of eugenics. Even other women's rights activists like Susan B. Anthony viewed her with great dismay. She named Frederick Douglass, the famous abolitionist, as her running partner. He didn't bother to respond to the call. Still, most historians agree that she still qualifies as the first female candidate for president in the U.S. Even more incredible, she ran in 1872, 48 years before women got the right to vote. The word we're talking about today is dismay. Now, dismay, we use the story of the first female to ever run for president. And really, it's quite an inspiring story, or at least it could be, right? They were so close because this one, Woodhull, and her sister were actually the first female stockbrokers, right, on Wall Street. They were strong suffragists, fought for women's rights, and all these things where, yeah, they really could have been right up there with all these other women's rights people. But they were just a little bit too far out there. They had some fairly wild ideas, including, it was mentioned in the script, eugenics. She believed in the forced sterilization of those that she deemed unworthy to breed. Well, there's always this question, right, of at what point a negative takes away a person's positives, because you can look at all the things that she did that were very positive for women in the women's movement. And yeah, how crazy do you have to be before you take away those accomplishments? And you know what? I feel like forced sterilizations and eugenics, that does in fact cross that line, and I'm very sad to say it. But yeah, I think that's probably where I would draw that line.
Well, the troubling thing is how common a belief in eugenics was at the time, and continued to be actually well into the 20th century. Even,
Well, that was the whole basis of Hitler's...
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
All of that was, the whole idea of trying to improve the human gene pool by essentially cutting some people out, trimming the tree, so to speak, which is just, it's horrifying.
And even here in the United States, I mean, a lot of eugenics is this kind of boogeyman that pops up a lot when you're digging into any historical figure. When you get into their personal beliefs, a lot of them end up dabbling in this very unsavory world of eugenics. One of the big ones, actually, one of the major proponents in the United States was Charles Lindbergh.
Oh.
Yeah. Huge. I mean, very unfortunate. So not to detract from the positives and from their the brave and innovative and positive things that these people have done, but you will occasionally run into some of these unfortunate skeletons in the closet.
I think it's just something I understand the temptation especially with these very cerebral people who see just kind of the way society is going. Well, we need to guide this, right? There is a fundamental flaw in that kind of thinking, and history bears it out. You can't breed for excellence and intelligence. Anytime we've tried, it's mostly end up with horrible inbreeding and class systems that are just oppressive, where neither class actually excels. It stagnates human nature.
And it's a perfect demonstration of the dangers of pseudoscience, right? Because eugenics, at least in theory, right, there were a lot of people looking at it and saying, in theory, per my understanding of how genetics works, this should work perfectly and it should vastly benefit the human race, and instead leads to atrocities and to gross human rights violations, and I mean gross in multiple senses. And you had a lot of these unfortunate pseudosciences that popped up or have popped up over the centuries. Phrenology was another one that unfortunately generated a market for human skulls that obviously and dramatically violated a variety of ethical boundaries.
Well, one that's kind of a strange one, because it's still a very active part and even still respected, but almost started as a pseudoscience, was the very measuring of intelligence, the IQ test. It started out, the idea behind it was, at least, yes, we want to find a way of measuring intelligence, but the actual application, the actual test they start out with, and the uses that came out of that were just so bizarre. It was used as first the tests were written to favor certain people in classes, and then those results were used to prove that those people and classes and races were in fact better. We tested it, we've proved it, these ones are better. Well, you wrote the test for them. And so yeah, maybe not inherently a pseudoscience, but definitely the way they went at it was definitely a pseudoscience.
There are these unfortunate misapplications of science, and particularly science experiments. One that's very famous that you've probably seen various articles and TED Talks and who knows what over the last few years is the marshmallow test.
Oh yeah,
right.
Self-control.
Self-control. You give a child a marshmallow and you tell them that if they can wait 15 minutes without eating the marshmallow, they get another marshmallow, right? And people have taken that as this fundamental principle of if you do not have self-control, you are doomed. Because these kids were, that weren't able to wait on the marshmallow, then didn't perform as well in school, didn't test as highly on these blah, 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 blah. What the test was actually meant to show was that anyone can improve their self-control. The point of it was they had, they did the marshmallow thing, and, some of the kids ate the marshmallow, some of them waited. And then they sat the kids down and said, all right, well, try thinking about something else. Try telling a story with the marshmallow, and taught them these coping strategies for dealing with their impatience. And after just very brief coaching, every one of the kids was able to pass the marshmallow test. And so it was this illustration of anybody can do this. Anybody can improve their behavior. They just need a little bit of coaching. And instead it was interpreted as, if you don't get this right the first time, you're hopeless.
Which in many ways is an excellent parallel for eugenics. So,
yes,
eugenics is garbage.
Amen.